Well, let's take us to circa, 2023, where we are today. There's so much pressure to cut costs. You mentioned generative AI, which of course is going to have an impact on the workforce, and yet the skill set to be an excellent middle manager seems like we haven't necessarily had the same amount of training in the past
not
few
even
years.
close.
So what is the answer? What's the key message? Let's talk first to employers. What is the key takeaway that you want them to get from this book? First, buy it. We're not going to tell you everything, but
Well, and if they get the Audible version, they'll hear me.
Oh, good.
Which apparently is a good sleep aid. That's as I'm told by my daughter and stepdaughter.
As is Martha
Stewart.
Stewart, and she did okay. So I think soothing voices work.
When we were first really trying to put this together and say, well, what should they do about it? A good portion was maybe we could just revisit what it means to be a middle manager and the relative emphasis on where they spend their time. And so we asked, nearly 1,000 of them, I think was the basis, and say, well, what should you spend your time on?
This is a global study you did.
Right. What should you spend your time on? And funny enough, it looked a whole lot like meetings and planning. What would really help? And that looked a whole lot like, well, enough planning, but a whole lot more time with people. And what are you rewarded for? And people wasn't on that at all. And it's this idea of, you have for like mechanics, you say time on tools. We were saying, where's the time on talent?
I was seeing the stats, and it was bureaucracy was their number one complaint, right, of middle managers. And what do they want? They want more autonomy. Is that illogical? Is that reasonable? What we want, what we need?
A little bit of autonomy can go a long way. I don't think it should ever be a free-for-all.
Right.
We have 1,000 flowers blooming. But we used to talk about what does role clarity really mean. Simple role clarity is, here's what good looks like, by when, with whom, here's what you decide on your own, here's what you have to come back and ask me about. If you were to make sure that every person who got asked to do something had that, there's a pretty wide swath there for people to work in. I think they're asking for that. It's when it's things like 3 different teams are working on the same sort of thing. Oh, that's not what I wanted this. Where like their time and their attention and their efforts are treated cavalierly. I think that's an issue. And for me, it almost starts at a root of this whole swath of the middle is treated with some level of disrespect and a real lack of care. So you're saying, hey, what do we actually do? I think the first one is revisit the job.
Maybe rebrand the job. I talked about middle manager. I mean, it's not a term that makes the spirit soar.
No,
that way?
No, it's not. I mean, it's one of those, long ago when we wrote the Organizational Health Index, I would have called it culture had we been allowed. But in 2002, that wasn't an option.
So now we could rebrand it. You mentioned something called the Great Rebundling. What is that?
Well, for sure, there's an idea. If you look at work and you pull work apart into its component pieces, you say, well, that we're just not going to do anymore. Like good classic cost cutting starts with pulling the activities apart and saying,
where are we wasting our time?
Where are we just doing stuff that nobody cares about?
Yeah.
Let's lower the volume, lower the variability, reduce the handoffs. Actually, we're just not going to do that. Okay, now you add in what can be done by a machine, what can be done by technology, what's left for the humans. Of what's left for the humans, what does anyone want to pay for?
Yep.
Got it? Put those back together. Pull apart, change, put it back together.
Are there fewer managers in that scenario?
I'm not sure, and it's an unhelpful, it depends. In places where the work that your unit does is quite variable, and the skill level of the people is quite variable, you probably need significantly smaller spans of control. That would suggest more managers. In places where it's super homogenous, well-known, the tasks are well-known, you've routinized all of it.
More direct reports.
You can probably go bigger.
More inspirational leadership,
And
less
then it's,
hands-on.
yes, as Brian likes to say, Brian, one of the co-authors, the dull and the dangerous. There's a lot of stuff that's repetitive that actually is dangerous.
Yep.
And so there, your charisma, your esprit de corps, what you really try to bring out in the team matters way more. And you need these people desperately.
That's almost like the qualities you look for in a CEO. You're looking like mini-me almost for the CEO.
At a minimum, the translation part, where you think about how do we take this big 60,000-foot idea and bring it down to what does it mean for us, what does it mean for you? Job one.
So let's go back to the individual now, because individuals like myself, my dad was a middle manager and a great one as a sales manager. And what What advice do you have for those individuals? Because middle management is a place you often want to get out of, right? It is an interim step to something else, which maybe is part of the problem you chronicle in the book.
Well, I'd say that is a huge part of the problem. For some people, their best purpose is to stay right where they are.
So give them more money and change the titles every few months?
Upgrade the title. If the organization, that the team they're leading has more value, pay them more, put more at risk, make them, in some parts, most of us, the human experience at work, want to feel like it's connected to what matters, that we're contributing, that we're supported, and we can have a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
We don't want to feel like it's random. We don't want to feel like it's chance. We want the satisfaction of working hard at something and having it. The people who are good at helping people see that, experience it, worth their weight in gold.
Great.
Right? And that's, so to me, there's something here about, and in fact, we detail this at some, there's a story in there for Kelsey, right? The person who took the job and then the person who didn't. The person who took the job, the case was Kelsey. It was about a for-profit education center.
Yeah.
That's actually my longtime partner, Becky Kepner.
Okay.
Right, and then she worked at a for-profit
No
place.
longer anonymous in the book.
That's okay. She's all right with it. In fact, we called the lady who helped us with the writing, who wasn't an author, and saying, Becky said to her, "I've never felt so heard."
Okay, well that's good.
So well done,
That's
Phyllis.
good.
Shout out to you. But I think this idea of, for some people, and here we use the example of running the centers, you put him even 1 degree of freedom away from the action, it just doesn't have the juice.
Yeah.
And that juice is what has them working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. It has them there. I mean, I've said I even told you this one time. My first job when I left Moravian was at a place called Kids Peace, National Centers for Kids in Crisis. And I was hired to run a unit. It was anywhere from an 18 to 25 bed unit, depending on it. And the guy who hired me walked me out of his office and pointed up to the building. He said, "See that building? It's yours. All the kids in there, yours. The staff, yours. What happens there, yours. Whether you're here or not, it's yours. Do you understand?"
That's a very powerful message.
It was amazing. I think they were paying me something like $16,500 a year.
Yeah.
Right? And I'd have done it for nothing, or nearly nothing.
No, I think it's a testament to your point to the power of impact, and what bigger impact can you have than the lives and careers of other people. So the book, Power to the Middle, we're speaking with Bill Schaninger, and I hope you buy it. It's a great book. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.